Alright, so I probably shouldn't be up right now. I only got like 5 hours of sleep last night. Let me see how many hours I slept. I got 6 hours and 13 minutes, which isn't horrible. But my eyes are a little tired. But I just want to create this video. Um, Actually, I'm coming up with the script for my new video. I'm trying to understand exactly what it is I'm creating. So so yeah. So right now I got my whiteboard here that I'm gonna be ideating from, and then I'm gonna be playing this video here in the background so that you guys can see kind of what I'm working with, what the idea or concept of the video is, and yeah, you can just watch along with me. Um, so yeah, let me see. Um, Bro,
I have painting, I have dancing, music, everything that is related to that. And then in the design part, I had architecture is related to that. And then in the design part, I had architecture, industrial design, which is like furniture and everything small, like handles, bottles, packaging. So that's industrial design. And then in the part of teaching, over here, I have like all the tutorials I've been watching. I've been reading about psychology and eh, how to be charming, but not charming as a womanizer, but more charming to the masses. Like how to win friends and influence people. That's one of the best books on that. And so that would be part of the teaching. Um, and this is where it gets interesting because in the art part, the classes that I've been taking for art, right? Let's say they come back to the teaching part because as a you're a student, but you're also a let me get another color. You're a student, but you're also taking notes. You're also seeing how, let's say, Larry's a great dancing teacher because he's very precise and he doesn't let you get away with bad habits. And he says the bad habits you have to catch them on early enough. Otherwise, it's really hard to forget them. So now the note is over here and it's converging in the teaching part and the art part, which was dancing and I don't know the lessons taken, like and then mentorship. So if you're looking at it from the side, which is this, it's branching out, right? Every skill is branching out, but if but because you have a purpose, which is the core in
it
this
never
case.
branches out too far,
Exactly. So yes, you are going like this. Boom.
and you're constantly going like that, right? Like you're always gonna want to be taken far away, but there's a gravitational pull from the purpose that all always coalesces it together.
Exactly. And that's the most important. Why? Because you have a purpose. If you
Right.
don't have a purpose, so let's say, let's collapse this. That's over here. So a life, so that's the core. Mm. A life without it will start looking like you think you have a purpose because uh again, Jordan Peterson said it best when he said we all have a God. We just don't know it. But if you are only after money, that's your God, right? So let's say a businessman, all he wants is money, and then he has a business, and then His family was over here. His family life, his spiritual life is over here. But then he starts only thinking about the money. And then at work, there's this woman that he likes, and he just sleeps with her. And then he's like, whatever, like his secretary or something. Like it starts going this way, and the shape goes like that. So if you have a scale, it starts going like this, and everything else is dying. So your spiritual life is dead. The relationship with your kids is non-existent, but you have a lot of money. But by the time you look back, like it's sad that your life is not
Because you have like areas that are missing, like you have dead space on the left because uh you have veered off too off center, and there are areas that are not connecting. So then, like, maybe you don't have a relationship with your children. Maybe you lack in finances. Like that's where um these like the lack comes from.
correct. Yes, yes. That's yeah, it's definitely. Can you see the zooming in?
Yeah, I'm
And
seeing the zooming in, or what are you talking about?
I'm trying to zoom in to the screen, but can you see
Yeah,
that? Oh,
I'm seeing various.
oh,
You think
sorry.
maybe you could screen record or no?
I can't screen. I don't know how to do that with my laptop.
Okay.
Well,
I want,
we can take these and then we can make another one.
let I want to show something.
Life without it will start looking like you think you have a purpose because, uh, again, Jordan Peterson said it best when he said, "We all have a God, we just don't know it." But if you are only after money, that's your God, right? So let's say a businessman, all he wants is money, and then he has a business, and then his family was over here. His family life, his spiritual life is over here. But then he starts only thinking about the money. And then at work, there's this woman that he likes, and he just sleeps with her. And then he's like, whatever, like his secretary or something. Like it starts going this way, and the shape goes like that. So if you have a scale, it starts going like this, and everything else is dying. So your spiritual life is dead. The relationship with your kids is non-existent, but you have a lot of money. But by the time you look back, like it's sad that your life is not
Because you have like areas that are missing, like you have dead space on the left because uh you have veered off too off center, and there are areas that are not connecting. So then, like, maybe you don't have a relationship with your children. Maybe you lack in finances. Like that's where um these like the lack comes from.
correct. Yes, yes. That's yeah, it's definitely. Can you see the zooming in?
Yeah, I'm
And
seeing the zooming in, or what are you talking about?
I'm trying to zoom in to the screen, but can you see
Yeah,
that? Oh,
I'm seeing various.
oh,
You think
sorry.
maybe you could screen record or no?
I can't screen. I don't know how to do that with my laptop.
Okay.
Well,
I want,
we can take these and then we can make another one.
let I want to show something that's gonna blow your mind right now.
Okay. So with a balanced life and okay, I once read this principle that said balance is bullshit because nature is not balance. We have the seasons, so nature is by itself is e- there's equilibrium. So there's a season of a lot of heat. There's a season for a lot of cold, and so we really cannot be balanced because balance is kind of boring. But we are in equilibrium. So There will be a season when you take dancing like super intense. It is gonna it's gonna go like more like this way. And then there's gonna be a season where you might study a lot of books, and then it's gonna go this way. And then there might be a season when you become very religious or very spiritual. But at the end of the day, because you have this core, and the core is the most important part, everything is gonna be in the if you zoom out, the main shape it's still going this way, right? So it's still going like that. And this is the core, in my opinion. It's your values, purpose, but it has also it's pushed by one thing, and that's the one thing we cannot change from this core, and it's the time. So the purpose,
You said
so
time.
time. So the arrow is also pushing you through time. Time is pushing you through this arrow because it's not flat. It's time is happening. So you have to choose which one of these nodes you're gonna put effort into it. Like I would love to do all of them, but I can't. So I have to choose which nodes are gonna be useful right now. So in your case, you as a mentor, you have can be a responsibility, but you have a chance to help us say, okay, let's say Larry. I want to dance really, really well, and I only have a limited amount of time. Larry told me, I have a friend who actually told me, he's like, don't do bachata yet. Not yet. Not yet. First, come back to this and do salsa and do it very well. And once you do salsa very well, this note of bachata is going to be way easier for you because now you have the rhythm, you have the counting, you have the spins, you have the leading faster, so you will slow down. What I did is I asked Vavna, I went to Vavna and said, Vavna, I want a good foundation of salsa. What do I do? And then Bhavna said, take Larry's all the levels, go from one, two, three, four. So that's what I did. So my foundation here was very good, and it took me about a year. But now I can learn faster. And I'm not saying I'm really good at dancing, but the notes that I add here is easier to add because of these one. That was very. It was a foundational. So you as a mentor, you can guide us to say, okay, before you read Jung, go back to read, I don't know, something else. Because it's gonna be really it's gonna be frustrating, which is one of the hardest frustration is probably the biggest hurdle we have as a teachers for the students. Frustration is what makes you quit. It's not the pain, it's the frustration that you cannot go fast enough or it's too difficult. And that's what video games are really good at. There's a difficulty and the skill, right? So if the
We
difficulty
need,
is, huh?
hold on. We need to because I have to help Liz. I have to go,
Go, go,
but
go.
this is really good. I think this is really kind of the next phase of our work. I feel like do you feel what I'm saying? Like I we work together and we create concepts together. Like I bring the concept and you illustrate the concept. Um like this is people are gonna look at this and it's gonna make sense. It's very complicated, but you explaining it in a way that's great. And I want to show something that I want to show to you after, before.
Hmm.
Um,
Was that a rant? For my,
was that a rant? No, that wasn't. That was
no, no, my rant.
huh?
I've been studying a lot of these, but it's really hard to explain. So I don't want
Well,
to be
look,
all over the place.
you see this?
Oh, let me see it. How do I do full screen? Oh, full screen. Okay, I've seen that before.
That's the tree of life. It's been existing for years. People use it for divination, but do you see exactly? Do you see the concept you just illustrated is like a mirror to this?
Yes.
And guess what? That is also where am I?
It's like the DNA spiral.
Yeah,
Right.
all life is like that. Let's look at a chakra system. Like it's a straight line, but if we look at the all the chakras,
Hello everyone, Simon Jacobson here, and we'll be speaking about the true definition of Kabbalah. The ancient mystical teachings known as Kabbalah, which for millennia has been unknown, obscure, hidden, secret, has recently become almost a household name, even fashionable. You hear the word Kabbalah. I know in my traveling and speaking engagements, you add the word the Kabbalah of, you have double the audience. The Kabbalah of money, the Kabbalah of sexuality, the Kabbalah of Donald Trump. I'm just kidding. The Kabbalah of anything right away adds to the intrigue. So one would think, okay, everything has its time. Once obscure and hidden and concealed, now it's become popular and fashionable. But is that really the case? Do we really know what Kabbalah is? Do we even know the meaning of the word Kabbalah? Ask yourself. Ask anyone out there. What does the word mean? So most people say the secrets of existence, the secrets of the cosmos. Is that the definition of the word Kabbalah, or is that what the teachings teach? And even that, what does that mean, the secrets of the cosmos? So we will be speaking about this, obviously. And the reason I'm discussing it now is because tonight, New York time, where I am, in Israel it's already begun 6 to 7 hours earlier. In Australia, it's almost the end of the day, well, not quite. This Thursday, meaning tonight and tomorrow, is called Lag BaOmer. The 33rd day of the Omer counting, which refers to the 33rd day that we count from the second day of Passover, the countdown for 49 days to reach the 50th zenith of law. And the Agada, which is the homiletics, the parables, the stories, and so on, Rab Shbi, Shimon Vayecha codified it in the book called the Zohar, the Holy Zohar, the Book of Splendor, which is considered the classic magnum opus, the classic work of mysticism. A lot of it is very cryptic, but some of it is understandable, but it becomes so-called like the Bible. I wouldn't call it the Bible because it's still oral interpretation, but in the world of mysticism, it's the first codified work, so to speak. There are works they say preceded. One is the Book of Formation, Sefer Yetzirah, attributed to Abraham. You have Raziel HaMalach, the angel Raziel, attributed to Adam. But the Zohar goes down as the book that really establishes. It's a commentary on the entire Torah, but it has many different sections in it, and Rashbi is the author of that. He didn't write it himself. He had a student called Rab Abba, who he dictated to, who wrote down, including writing down actually the narrative, the events that happened on this day when Rashbi passed away. But something unique happened. Reb Shimon Bar Yochai, this great sage, requested that his day of passing should be celebrated for the generations as a Yom Simchosei, my day of joy, because the day where my soul reconnected with God in the purest sense of the word, not unfettered by the bounds of the body and the limitations of the body. So ever since, Lag BaOmer has become a day of celebration, celebrating as Rashbi had requested, commanded, expected of his students, and that has become and grown through the generations, and that is why, if you go to Israel, you can see it online, literally hundreds of thousands of people make a pilgrimage in this 24-hour period to Miran, which is in northern Israel, where his gravesite, where his oil, where he laid to rest. And they sing during the night and they celebrate exactly as he had requested. And this is a custom done all over the world in many communities. Why is this so significant? Well, why would there be a celebration more on this day than so many other special yard sites? Great people passed away, Moses passed away, other sages, even Rabbi Akiva, the great sage and teacher of Rashbi. Because there's something about Rashbi, which is also shrouded in mystery, that captured our imagination. And therefore, till this day, has some type of impact on us. It's a day considered to be a day that miracles can happen, especially regarding the opening up of wombs, women who can have children, and the same also psychologically and emotionally, those that have different blocks and impediments and obstacles. It's a day of openings, which is what Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai did. We'll talk more about it through this talk, through this presentation, which is a special presentation in honor of Lag BaOmer. And that's why we're talking about the true definition of Kabbalah. I hope you'll find this as fascinating and as interesting as I did when I discovered these ideas and continuously discover new elements and new dimensions and new depths. So let's begin why Kabbalah does, for some reason, capture people's attention. Because people like the secrets. Let's be honest, human beings gravitate to the exotica. Things that are apparent or revealed, we always want to know what's behind the door, what's under the dashboard, what's behind the scenes, beyond the doors of perception. And we look for that mystery. So it's not surprising that people are intrigued when you hear the mysterious esoteric teachings. You hear the secrets of the soul, the secrets of the cosmos, the blueprint and DNA of existence, of the universe and beyond. The divine blueprint that makes us all tick. These are fascinating elements. And that's why on one hand, yes, it does touch a certain resonating element in us wanting to know, like just like children like to open up and see what makes something tick. We want to know what makes things tick. And we've heard that the Kabbalah teaches that. So we're interested. But what great care has to be taken, that it shouldn't feed on, and spill over into sensationalism. which is why they say, by Kabbalah, those that say don't know, and those that know don't say, which of course creates the quandary. If I say anything, it means I don't know. However, as we shall discuss, the kind of time that Kabbalah did become more revealed for certain very important reasons. So what is Kabbalah? What is really, first of all, the meaning of the word? Because once we have the meaning of the word, that will become the key. That will open up for us this fascinating journey into the deeper dimensions of existence and of ourselves. So the word Kabbalah, surprise, surprise, it will be deceptively simple. It means to receive or reception. That's all it means, to receive or reception. And you'd say, but 1 second, what does that mean? I mean, if I have a mobile phone and as a signal, I'm receiving. Indeed, that's the key to what Kabbalah truly is. So though all knowledge is passed on from teacher to student, from parent to child, from generation to generation, which means the student has to be in receptive mode, the receptor or receptacle, receiving from the giver, from the transmitter. Yet when it comes to these teachings, it's even more critical. That's why the entire study of it is called Kabbalah. And for two reasons. You need to be in a receiver from someone before you. It's not something you can come up with your own ideas. These are ideas that in order to preserve their integrity and to really have the impact, they really need to be pure and passed on from teacher to student. So you need to be Kabbalah. Who were you Kabbalah from? Who did you receive from? You can say, well, all knowledge is that way, true. But the more subtle the knowledge and the more profound, the more dense, the more subtle, the more important it is to have that receiving teacher from student. And the second element, which goes even deeper and connected to the first reason, is that you need to be in a receiving mode. If you're a master, or you feel you're a master, you feel you have a lot to give, that's not the mode of Kabbalah. The mode of Kabbalah is I'm an empty receptacle, an empty channel, channeling something greater than I am. So though, again, this is true for all knowledge, when it comes especially to the spiritual DNA, the inner workings of existence and of the human being, there it's even more amplified and more important. Because you're dealing with literally the nuances. Think of it this way. When you perform surgery, especially sensitive surgery, neurological surgery, brain surgery, or heart surgery, it's very different than other types of surgery. Now, all surgery, you need a master. You don't want a novice, because every part of the body is intricate. But the more intricate it is, the more care has to be in how it's taught, because one slip, God forbid. And on the other hand, you're dealing with very, very subtle areas of the human being, and therefore much more complex and much more important to be in a receiving mode, a humble mode. A little tinge of arrogance when it comes to mathematics or it comes to other elements of study is also not healthy, because arrogance distorts the mind, creates biases and prejudices, and you can end up making mistakes. But when it comes especially to sensitive matters of life and death, where every detail, every micro detail matters, then it has to be so much more so. That state of Kabbalah, of being a student and being in a student state always. Because when you're dealing with these inner matters, as we're going to explain now, you'll see why it's so critical. So in life in general, a person has two states: the way we're givers, the way we're takers. Or I would say receivers and transmitters. In the early parts of our lives, we're more receptacle mode. Children learn. They learn from their environment, they learn from their parents, from their environments, from their schools, from their friends, from their teachers, for good or for bad. But that's a child is a dry sponge, an empty container, and it's just beginning to fill up with energy. As we get older and we become more familiar with information, we also start mastering it, and then we can also become teachers. In truth, a healthy human being should be both a student and a teacher, different times. But you begin by first absorbing, then by processing, as I've discussed many, many times. Now, if a person never is an absorber, didn't know how to listen well, you can't trust that they'll know how to speak well. Because they didn't really have that state where they were humbled, where they were modest, where they were in that point where they are a student of information. Then you can ask yourself a question: do they really convey the integrity of the original? I've seen people who are brilliant, and they present an idea, and very often I go check, and I see they didn't really master what it said. They were smart, so they got it quickly, and they convey it more or less, and sometimes actually with mistakes, but you can tell they rushed, and they began to transmit before they absorbed. You want someone who spent many years absorbing, learning, apprenticing, residency, before they become a teacher. So that is critical, as I said, in all aspects of life, but especially when you're dealing with the secrets of and DNA of our souls, of our bodies, of who we are, then it takes on a whole new shape and form. Why? Because think of it this way. If somebody gets up there and is doing a course on real estate tips, or writing tips, or cooking tips, even if they have a tinge or more than a tinge of arrogance, you may say, you know what? I don't care about their arrogance. At least I'm getting what my money's worth. I get the tips. I don't care about the person. But if they're talking about matters of the heart and soul, about emotions, about empathy, about how to reach a more deeper transcendent state, and they stink from arrogance, it taints the whole communication. And you say, can I trust this? They're very good, they're academic. So it's one thing being academic about a subject matter that is not important that you be an example of it. But I don't want to find out that a person is cruel to their children or to their spouse or to other people and talking to me about sensitivity. You say, why not? You just accomplish emes mamisha, right? Receive the truth from wherever it is. But here you're learning it from a person, and you say to yourself, you know what, is that the message? That you can be one thing and say another? So when it comes to matters, as I said, real estate or something like that, there too, humility wouldn't hurt, and we'd be more receptive. But when it comes to matters of the heart and soul, you want some integrity, at least an attempt at integrity. A person can say, I'm not perfect. What I'm teaching, I also aspire to. But you don't see them using the material to be arrogant. That's why it's so vital to have that receptive mode. When it comes to psychological, emotional, spiritual issues, we call psycho-spiritual matters, the Kabbalah mode is even more vital than ever. Firstly, that creates empathy. Like they say, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Secondly, you can trust the material. And thirdly, the material is actually being conveyed consistent with what its message is. As I said, cooking, so you're cooking, fine. So you convey it whatever way you convey it. At least you give me the recipe, you give me the tools, the method. But here, it's the approach as well. How you teach it is also part of what you're teaching. I can go on and on, but I think the point is clear. So that's why when it comes to Kabbalah, it was always taught with so much care. It was not taught in big groups. It was kept secret. Not because secret to be confidential, but because it's so easy to abuse. When you start understanding the inner workings of a human being, and you're not a compassionate person, and You're not a person of integrity, you can become a con artist. You can start getting to your head that you know how to figure out people. You can become a manipulator. That's on a gross level. More subtly, you can make mistakes in such an area that you only want people who really respect you. You don't want anyone in the internal surgery room that does not have the trust, is not clean, is not sterilized. And in this case, spiritually and emotionally and psychologically, tampering with the inner workings of people and the cosmos. So if they were just mechanics, plumbers, it's one thing. I'm talking about physical plumbers. So they're dealing with something where you don't need to have that level of sensitivity. But if they are dealing with that inner self, I'm entrusting them with my soul, with my life. There you want them to be in a Kabbalah state, that they're receiving. They're not the powerful, all-powerful mastery over you. They are channeling that which came to them from their teacher. So Kabbalah as a receiving from their teacher, and which they're receiving right now, because they're empty receptacles and allowing it to flow through them. And that becomes critical. That is why it's so challenging when you see today Kabbalah has become popular, fashionable. You have to always wonder, are people, is there the element of that humility? Is there the element of that modesty, that bittul, that suspension of self? Or people like, sometimes they, I'm a Kabbalist. I know a lot of Kabbalah. And I'll tell you what I know, and they start spouting off. They may even actually know stuff. But in many ways, they know less than someone who doesn't know. Because they're missing the whole point. The whole point is that to create a more humbler person. Not someone who can say, hey, I got a PhD in mathematics, I have a PhD in medicine, in law, and I also have a PhD in Kabbalah. No, it doesn't work that way. Kabbalah is not about PhDs. The PhD is how much you've emptied yourself. How much have you freed yourself of your ego? How much have you gone beyond your self-interest and comfort zone? That's the PhD in Kabbalah. But you don't get a PhD because on that level, we don't look for awards or rewards or any other type of recognition. You're just who you are. You're a humble, simple servant of a higher truth. And that's what the true Kabbalists were, starting from Rav Shimon Bar Yochai, who's like Boemer's his yahrzeit, his Yom Hilula, Yom Simcha, his day of joy. And that will explain why he of all people we celebrate. Because he wasn't just another person. They were tremendous sages, and they were all humble people. Rabbi Akiva, the greatest of the great. He taught, love your fellow as yourself, is called as a fundamental principle. Great of great. But he didn't have that element. He himself says in the Talmud that my student Rashbi, he is the cream of the crop. And that doesn't take away from Rabbi Akiva. Everyone has their role. What was Rav Shimon Bar Yochai's key role? To bridge two worlds. The world of the superconscious and the world of the conscious. The revealed and the hidden. And that's why he was a master in both worlds. Rabbi Akiva and others were also masters. They also knew Kabbalah. But he was the teacher. I should say the student, the Kabbalah. In many ways, he represented that element of a transparent and empty container channel. Anosim ana ba'alma, the Talmud says. Rabbi Rashbi said, all I am is a signpost. I'm nothing. I am nothing. I am just a channel. Look at me as a signpost. That's what he said. Because he channeled that deeper and higher wisdom. Again, I want to make it clear that Rabbi Akiva and many sages did that. But some people stand out for what he did in that way, and that's what he represented. The bridging of those two worlds, the bridging of the world of the soul and the world of the body. The soul of Torah, the body of Torah. The soul of the human being, the body of the human being. The soul of the cosmos, the body of the cosmos. Because as the Kabbalah teaches, as well as the Talmud and the Medrash, the sages teach, another fundamental, beautiful principle, microcosm, macrocosm. Everything that exists in the macrocosmic universe, at the cosmic level, exists in microcosm in a miniature form within us. The small universe, the mini universe, the universe of microcosm, that's the person. And Adam Gadol is Elam. And the human and the world is a large organism, a large microcosm. Macrocosm, I should say. So it's all intertwined. And like a hologram, it's not just intertwined, it's all continuously interconnected as one large integral unity, multifaceted pieces. Harmony within diversity. That's what Rav Shimon Bar Yochai taught. So the true meaning, definition of Kabbalah is to receive, is to free yourself, to empty yourself, to shed your sense of self in order to absorb and channel and receive something greater than yourself. That's its essence. And in Kabbalistic teachings, in the mystical teachings, it's more important than ever. When you're studying, let's say, law, halacha, Jewish law, you're studying, for example, what's supposed to be done on Shabbat, what's not, what laws, what work you can do, what you can't do, what prayers to say, what you eat on Passover, what you do on Shavuos. So there you're mastering facts. Facts, intricate facts, many different opinions, there's theories, there's ideas. But it's facts. You need humility as well. All wisdom. Reishus Chachma Yiras Hashem. The beginning of all wisdom is awe of the divine, of something greater than you are. But when you're dealing with the inner dimension, the subtlety becomes so much greater. Think of it like this: when a piece of dust is on your finger, a little ego on your finger, a blemish. But if a little piece of dust is on your eye, then it's very irritating. The deeper you go inside the inner workings, every small nuance, every detail, every iota is so much more significant. That's why on the level of the DNA, of the cellular level, the microscopic level, then every little detail matters so much more. So in the Kabbalah, every little blemish, every tinge of ego, that's not Kabbalah mode, meaning receptive mode, will distort. It may not distort immediately, but in time. So that's critical for the journey. So when people say, I want to go on a journey to Kabbalah, the more you want, the less you'll have it. The Kabbalah journey of Kabbalah requires stepping back and don't want it so much. You say, but I do want it. Get the I out of the sentence, not I want it. You want to experience something greater? Free yourself. Of what? Of your ego, of your determination even. Just become a humble, simple person. And you know what will happen? These vistas will open up for you. It emerges. You cannot acquire it. Trying to force it goes against the whole nature of it. Trying to force the petals of a flower to open. Try to force a child to come out of the womb prematurely, God forbid. It needs the time to develop, it needs time to emerge, and it's a process. It's a process and emergence that we need. And we need the humility, the Kabbalah state of being, where you're in a receptive mode, where you're not the giver, that you're not the acquisitioner, the acquirer, you're not the buyer, the purchaser. You are in a receptive mode, and then it emerges. Abraham, when searching for God, he realized by process of elimination that it's not in his own environment. His father was a massive, major idol manufacturer. You need a God, an idol, I have one for you. Abraham at a young age realized it's a whole bluff. He realized these idols made of wood or stone or metal were meaningless. So he rejected the world of the pagan world of his father and of his community, of his society. He began searching. How do you search? You start saying, okay, it's not that. What may it be? He went out into the meadows, into the fields, into nature, looked around. Beautiful nature. So the sun, the moon, maybe it's that. Then he realized the sun sets, the moon sets. They're just part of the same creation. They're just bigger, more distant, maybe more awesome. And he came slowly to a process of elimination, saying, it's not this. So where is it? The stars? Is it beyond the stars? And then he came to the big epiphany, the realization. I'm looking for my creator. I'm looking for God. I'm just a piece of the whole creation. If there's indeed a creator, I'm one little piece. How could the piece define the whole? The whole defines the piece. And he realized the actual search was undermining his ability to truly experience it. Of course, you can experience some levels of transcendence. But when he discovered that, he has to let go. And then what happened? You know what happened? It emerged. His search itself, though commendable and admirable, and everybody should search, his search led him that I should stop searching now. Maybe just let it emerge. Let me close my eyes, my ears, my taste, touch, and smell. Let me stop using my aggressive faculties and resources and senses, and let me see what happens. And that quietude, in that silence, God emerges. Because the truth emerges from within. It's not something out there. Again, you could experience something out there, but the truth, it comes from within. And when Abraham realized that, he said, I just have to let go. I need to be Kabbalah state. I need to be in receptive mode. Stand in front of a beautiful natural wonder. What happens? If you're trying to master it, you're trying to let me take pictures of it, let me analyze it, let me explain it, there's a certain moment where you have to realize you just let go. Just stand. Stand in awe. And it's an unbelievably purifying and transformative and refining experience. Because it's not about you. You suddenly get absorbed in the moment. Think of music. You're listening to music. If you start analyzing this music, I like it. Stop. Stop everything. Let go. In a way, undress everything. You know what happens? The music envelops you, engulfs you. Just like when you go underwater. There's that piece. You allow it to consume you instead of you consuming it. But if you're a consumer, if you're a purchaser, an acquisition person, it becomes commercial. Same thing when you're absorbed in a book. If you're reading the words and you recognize the words in the pages, you're not in the zone, you're not in the moment. Let go. And then suddenly you're reading the book as if it's happening right now. You can cry and laugh. And someone come by and say, well, he's reading a book. You don't even realize you're turning pages. You don't even realize there's words on the page. A good writer can do that. Everything melts. Everything melts with object and subject become one, and you're completely absorbed. Those are the most magical moments of life. And then suddenly you wake up, and you're out of it. The same thing is when we're in love. When deep love, the passions and throes of love. What is the ultimate experience? A loss of self. Completely melting and absorbed in the experience. We wish we could have much more of that. But we're human beings that do live in a world of duality and are not always blessed to be able to come to that place where you melt into the experience. But that's the ultimate experience. You become it, not you experience it. A dry hand becomes wet when it's put into water. A fish is part of the wetness, but water itself doesn't become wet. It is wetness. You can acquire knowledge or you can become knowledge. You become what you know, not just you know the idea. You become it. You experience it. And initially you experience it, you're here, and you're experiencing something. Then they come into one. Rajbi personified this type of seamlessness of all of existence. And he lived on that level. It was a very sublime and very pure level. But the mission and goal was not to remain there. It was to enter a world of duality, a world of pettiness, and there repair. As the story is, that Rajbi had to hide from the Romans who pursuing him because he studied and taught Torah, which was a forbidden death penalty. So he hid for 12 years in a mire in a cave, miraculous food, all becoming this unbelievably sublime state with his son, Rabbi Elazar. Then came news that he can come back home.
Well, this evening we have a little light literature here. When I gave you a break, I only brought the first volume. Manuscripts are being sought out, collected, placed at the disposal of scholars, and the modern tendency is to view the Kabbalah much as the Jewish people have viewed the Dead Sea Scrolls. As a relic of the past, it may be of immediate value in solving basic problems, not only of Jewish sociology, but of the relationships between the Jewish and non-Jewish worlds. Von Rosenroth was aware of this. He sensed it long ago. He knew that this very mysterious subject was deep, was important, but like most of the scholars of his time, he was unable to cope with it in a complete manner. Individuals who knew much less than he did have therefore risen as his critics, complaining about minor errors of translation and worrying about the possible alternative meanings of carefully worded phrases. But in spite of this picking process, which has so long attempted to discredit honest scholarship, his volumes remain as the great monument, for they signify the first real efforts to use Kabbalism to bridge the interval between Jewish and non-Jewish thinking. Up to the time of von Rosenroth, practically all of the Kabbalistic literature was in Jewish only, and the non-Jewish European society had no particular interest in this literature. In fact, they were really afraid of it. It became involved in a great many rather unsavory legends, and was finally regarded by Orthodox non-Jewish people as perhaps some form of Satanism, endangering the morality of the virtuous. But now that these older clouds have passed from the horizon, we are interested in trying to understand one of the most confusing, perplexing, and austere of all concepts of life. I suppose the only parallel work in obscurity is the Chinese volume, the Ideating, or Classic of Changes. And in many respects the two works are similar. Both deal with extremely obscure metaphysical concepts. Both have a tremendous traditional antiquity, and both have survived to this time, much to the wonder and even consternation of scholars. Within the last 15 or 20 years, however, the Ideating has become of interest far outside the boundaries of China. And the interest of the Jungian psychologists in the Chinese classic of changes may possibly indicate that in the future men of similar minds will begin to explore the recondite side of the Kabbalah. We really know very little about the antiquity of this work. We know that it was first circulated in Europe about the year 1305. At that time, the principal exponent was Rabbi Moses of Leon, and for a long time it was assumed that he had fabricated the great Kabbalistic book, the Sefer HaZohar, or the Book of the Splendors. It was just taken for granted that he had fabricated and manufactured the entire work. More recently, however, it became obvious that if he did, he was perhaps the most extraordinary mind in history. It became easier to assume that this man, who though brilliant was not exceptional, had secured his information elsewhere. It just became too large a subject to be encompassed within the life and ability of one person. Rabbi Moses was a very busy man. His life was fairly well known. There was not much possibility that a work of the magnitude of the Zohar could have been produced by him without others knowing about the processes. He would certainly have had to call upon rare reference material and things of that nature. And this was not apparently the direction of his life at all. So perhaps it would be wiser to assume that his own idea, his own statement at the time, was reasonably valid. Namely, that the work had come into his possession in manuscript form as part of the unwritten or unpublished, we'll say, legacy of Israel. In other words, that it was a work long secretly known, passed in rare copy from one great scholar to another, and that it finally came to his conviction that it should be brought together and made available to the world. To explain the origin of the work, Rabbi Moses ben Leon, therefore, took the attitude, or held forth the belief, that is more or less contained within the text itself, that the original author was a Rabbi Simeon ben Yochai, a man who wrote the work, or compiled it, under inspiration, about the year 161 AD, during the reign of the Roman Caesar, Marcus Aurelius Antoninus. This Rabbi Simeon was a mystic. To escape Roman persecution, he went into the wilderness and lived in a cave. And here for many years, he was supposed to have received mystical experiences, forms of illumination. The prophets of old came to him. He received instruction from the angelic hosts that are referred to in the Pentateuch. As a result of this great length of time in isolation in this cave, he gradually wrote down or transcribed this mystic doctrine. However, of course, the Rabbi Simeon did not himself claim that he invented the idea. He did not invent the Kabbalah, nor is it actually demonstrable that he was the first to write on the subject in ancient times. Actually, I think we will have to assume that the Kabbalah more or less accumulated, and all of this accumulation did not take place within the body of ancient Jewry itself. The moment we begin to investigate the subject, we come upon a number of other interesting possibilities. The date 161 AD may be comparatively correct for an important revelation by compilation of certain doctrines that were available in the Near East at that time. The actual structure of the Kabbalah shows that it is profoundly indebted to Gnosticism, the sect that was flourishing at that time in North Africa and in parts of Syria, a sect which has come again into prominence in recent years from the discovery of the great Gnostic library at Chenobastian in central Egypt. The Gnostics taught a doctrine of emanations as a means of reconciling the Creator as an abstract principle, God, and the creation as a concrete structure. The problem of bridging between deity in its universal and mystical sense and the formal universe. This problem was one of the great problems of Gnosticism, and it is also one of the essential elements in the great Kabbalistic system. Also at this time, we must remember that Mahayana Buddhism was rising in India, perhaps had already risen. And this conveys another important element, which perhaps had been generally neglected in the Near East, and therefore was felt to be necessary in the unfoldment of Jewish religion. The Kabbalah, for example, deals with a basic problem of the difference between transcendence and immanence. Transcendence in this sense means the transcendence of God. Jewish religion had, orthodoxly speaking, created a God above and superior to the world. This deity rested eternally above the world and the planets and beyond the grasp and contact of living things. Seated on its eternal throne, it was an absolute despot over creation. This distant, all-powerful God, the God of Abraham and the God of Isaac, was scarcely the concept of deity most useful to the Jewish people during the Roman captivity. The Jewish empire kingdom was gone. These people had received a tremendous spiritual disaster into themselves. This disaster undermined faith. It undermined the old way of life. It seemed to cry out that God had forgotten Israel. It seemed as though there was too much of punishment and not enough of forgiveness in the divine nature. This God of powers and glories, this El Shaddad the strong, was not the type of deity that could comfort a sick, forlorn, and miserable, scattered people. Something nearer, something more immediate to their lives was very necessary to them. There is really no doubt in the world that this was also one of the mainsprings of Christianity, which arose in the same general area, and also came to a people, weary and disillusioned and tired. This sense of Christian immediacy certainly profoundly affected the religions of the West, especially through the Christology of St. Paul. So it is quite possible that Mahayana Buddhism, which had this tremendous emphasis upon the immediacy of spiritual authority, that it was not something infinitely remote, but something infinitely available. The deity was not far away always, not looking down from an omnipotence upon a tired world, but that in some way deity was here. Deity was therefore imminent. It was available at any moment, to be reached, to be understood in some measure, to bestow its consolation upon the suffering heart and the broken pride and the tortured soul. This Mahayana Buddhism accomplished in connection with classical Buddhism, which was the rather austere doctrine that Gautama gave the world. This doctrine of Gautama was also too transcendent for the average Hindu to live by. He needed this softening, gentle touch. He needed this doctrine of the bodhisattvas, the wonderful beings who with their great ears listened forever to the sorrows of men, who were always available through prayer, and who interceded with the universe as consolers of human sorrow. The church fell somewhat into this same problem, and from it instinctively, patterning upon older peoples, Christianity developed its doctrine of saints and the doctrine of intercession, by which the individual, in his spiritual need, was able to bridge the interval between humanity and divine help. So we have in Kabbalism this arising among a people previously almost completely deficient in this particular attitude, almost entirely lost in a strange spiritual austerity, something perhaps suggestive of Brahmanism, something suggestive of the wonderful, deep, but incomprehensible wisdom of the universal power itself. Men could not live entirely supported only by the belief that God was wise. They had to also experience the fact that God was good, that God was love, that God was ever-present help in time of trouble. It therefore would seem reasonable that during the difficult periods in Jewish history, a number of sects should arise, like the Gebbers of Hebron, the Nazarites, and the Essenes, who were to emphasize this phase of the divine presence, that not only to the great scholar, the learned master of the Sanhedrin, would this spiritual presence of God be known, but also to just ordinary people, who could reach deity in some inward experience of their own. While the old Jewish system did not emphasize such intercession, it was to a measure present, at least archetypally, in their beliefs. For the system of Jewish prophets is almost unique in the religious literature of the world. These men of the wilderness and in the desert, these comparatively uncouth persons who dared to rise up in the presence of kings and threaten the wrath of God upon the unbeliever or the disobedient, even as the prophet from the wilderness dared to stand up and accuse David the king. So there were these men of the wilderness who lived close to God and who seemed to speak with the authority of deity. And this group together were called the prophets. And the Old Testament contains a number of prophetic books attributed to them. And all these books imply that these prophets had in some way attained knowledge of the divine will, or the divine purpose, and were therefore empowered to warn the people of the wrath to come. At the same time, we find running through the Kabbalah interesting scientific elements. And most of these elements probably must be traced back to the Greek Pythagoreanism. It is sometimes held now that the Essene community at En-Gedi by the Dead Sea was originally founded by Pythagoras. In any event, the Greek system certainly influenced both the Essene school and the Therapeutae of Egypt, another mystical Jewish community. The monadology of Pythagoras, his doctrine of number and numeration, certainly has become so associated with the Kabbalah that today many people, popularly referring to numerology, will call it Kabbalism. Certainly the Kabbalah did deal with a philosophic use of number to represent principles, to represent forces and powers, and to reduce universal processes to numerical equivalents. Also, the old idea of reading the meaning of names seems to have risen from this concept. For today, numerologists will take the letters of a person's name and, finding the numerical equivalent of these letters, will add them up, place them under the discipline of notoricon and gematria, as it is called in the Kabbalah, come to a sum number composed of the letters of a name, and then attempt to delineate or to variously analyze that person through the number of his name. Also, the ancient Hebrew belief that the days of man's life are numbered. Now, we've always interpreted that to mean that he could only live so long, but that these days might be numbered in some kind of a mathematical or magical manner has not generally occurred to the reader of Scripture. So in the numerical system of Pythagoras and other aspects of Greek philosophy, we find material which later, passing through a certain Judaistic interpretation, was embodied into the structure of their Kabbalah of numbers. Rabbi Akiva, in the Sefer Yetzirah, which was the book of the numerations, also gives us valuable information as to the numerical equivalence of the letters of the Hebrew alphabet. So here we have another phase of the subject. In Kabbalah also, as it passed particularly down into those dark and mysterious years which we know as the Middle Ages, certain elements of necromancy occurred. And to what degree this was essentially different from the demonism of Europe itself, which was passing through a psychological condition which seemed to make these metaphysical things a little too real. What the relationship was, we do not actually know. But we know that magic mingled with alchemy, that magic is to be found in many of the old Hermetic books, and that the various grimoires, or books of conjuration of spirits, all make use of Kabbalistic elements. Thus the signatures of angels and demons, and all of these mysterious rites by which spirits were invoked out of the misty deep of space. All these came finally to be called Kabbalism. Agrippa von Netzheim was one of those scholar mystics, esotericists, who combined magic, Hermetic arts, the Kabbalah, into a strange and mysterious compound, which caused him considerable religious difficulty before he got through with it. But at the same time, the policy was present. This is probably one of the reasons why, after we came out of the Dark Ages into a more modern point of view, that the Kabbalah was held in fear or disrepute. It was because it seemingly had been associated with demonology and witchcraft. It was also used and is still used in some parts of Europe and even in parts of Asia where Jewish communities exist for helping so-called possessed persons to get rid of evil spirits and things of that nature. All of these incrustations, however, actually belong to what might be termed the misunderstanding of the subject. The Jewish congregations in these dark periods were not much better informed